Hi there, it's that time again. This is going to be the 2024 update, Refrigerant Wars, Freon Wars, if you like that title. I'm a small Texas licensed HVAC contractor serving the Katy, Texas area, some surrounding areas. There's a few notable changes that's coming into play this year for my company. If you're a new customer contacting me, calling me, I've currently got an app on my phone to screen my calls because I am getting inundated with a bunch of robotic type calls. And so you need to state your name and the purpose of your call. If you're not calling me to schedule HVAC service or repair, I advise you not to call me. If you've got questions or comments, comment on my video. That is your best source. If you're just looking for informational aspects to one degree or another, sometimes I will go down that rabbit hole. One thing you got to realize is that, one symptom can be can mimic other problems. So I don't get into troubleshooting equipment over the phone. I don't get into none of that. I'm here for service and repair. You can call me at the number, but you've got to follow the prompts. State your name, the purpose of your call. Otherwise, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get through. You can text me. I've got a pretty good text filter on the phone to where, if you spam me, it's just going to go to a spam folder. You're not going to get any reply or anything like that. But if you're going to text me, you need to text me your name, your address, and I will call you back. Now, if you don't answer the phone, you need to put my phone number in your contacts. So if you're getting inundated with spam calls, then you can just have a setting on your phone to where you just accept phone numbers within your contacts. And that basically negates the spammers from calling people. It's one step forward. The problem is that they can spoof numbers. So, you've got to take it into consideration that they're going to try to fight you every step of the way because this is a battle against legality versus illegals and all this other nonsense that's trying to scam you. Now, if you're if you're a former customer and you're calling me from a number that you've called me before, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to notice anything different. It's going to go straight to me. And so this is just something that I'm going to be putting out there. It's going to take additional time of video. So if you're watching this video and you're looking for some other content besides what I'm telling you here, then you can just skip forward, pick and choose what you want to watch. But I'm putting this information out there in the event that somebody's trying to get a hold of me and they're having trouble. Another option, go to my website, www.austinairco.com, or my other website, katyacrepairreplace.com. Fill out the form and send the form to me that way. That's another way. Texting is probably easier because I'm going to get that message pretty quickly unless for some reason or another the filter deems it as spam. Anyways, I'm going to discuss this refrigerant war stuff in this segment. And so just realize that this particular update isn't as informative as I would like. Sometimes an HVAC timing of things, the time that it takes for changes to come can sometimes be slow. I anticipate these changes to come fairly quickly because time's running out. If you're in the need for, or you're shopping for new air conditioning, R410a this is likely going to be the last year for R410a. So, and the advantage to go into R410a just simply means that you have the potential of escaping a lot of this nonsense that's coming out. Because once 2024 is over, the choice is going to be made for you. You're only going to have a few choices, and that's going to be it. The costs for refrigerant are likely going to go up. Currently, as of 2024, there is a 40% cut in production, allowable production for R410a. So the more people that use R410a and have refrigerant leaks and so on, they're going to pay more for that refrigerant and so on. Anyways, I'm going to try to keep this segment around the 30 to 40 minute mark. I may run a little bit long because of having to explain all this other stuff. My apologies. You can skip through here. Another thing that I want to note is that the information that I'll be using in this video there will be links in the description. I will also provide links to previous videos that I've done previous years on this subject, where you can click and choose, which video you want to watch. If you go to my YouTube channel, it's on a playlist where it'll start you out at the beginning and it'll go all the way through it. The first five videos. This is going to be the 6th video on this subject. Anyways, without further ado, we're going to dive right into this. Stay tuned. We're going to go right into it. Thanks for watching. So this first article has to do with Europe, because Europe is a part of this as well. And I've got a link in the description to this article. It's going to be the first link. And I got it from coolingpost.com World News in association with PFAS ban. Now, the reason why I'm paying attention to Europe is because they've got this potential ban. It's going through the courts, and they're trying to determine, what's going to be banned and what's not. And there's some information that is, well, I'm just going to read the information. You can make up your own mind. I'm not going to try to put words into your mouth. I'm just going to give you the information and let it be. And, when I'm reading this, I'm going to describe certain things that you may be aware of, you may not be aware of. It's just try to help anyone that comes across this video to help them understand the subject matter that I'm talking about. Europe. The banning of just 5 refrigerants under the new PFAS regulation proposals would lead to the banning of virtually all current lower GWP, HFC, HFO alternative refrigerant blends. Now, right there is a mouthful. GWP stands for global warming potential. That's the whole uproar over this phase out of R410a. Now, R22, which is the older refrigerant that was banned in 2020, was due to ODP, which is ozone depletion potential. However, R-22 Freon is also highly GWP oriented. So even if it wasn't for the ODP, ozone depletion potential, it would still be phased out due to this GWP stuff that's coming out now. HFC stands for hydrofluorocarbon. That's what R410a is. It's an HFC. So to expand this out, CFC was one of the very first refrigerants considered a chlorofluorocarbon. R12 was a common one, and that was used for automotive. HCFC is the modern air conditioning refrigerant used for air conditioning in homes, and it's a hydrochlorofluorocarbon, R-22 Freon. HFC is a hydrofluorocarbon, that was R410a, for typically for air conditioning for businesses and residences. HFO is a hydrofluoroolefin. These are the new substances that are potentially forever chemicals, and essentially they could wind up polluting the water source and or food source, etc. And so because HFOs haven't been developed enough to be just a single one-off chemical for residential heating and air conditioning applications, they've had to blend that with HFCs. And so that HFC HFO is a blended substance.
That's going to be R454b because it's blended with 31% of R1234YF, which is an HFO, and it's blended with 69% of R32 that is an HFC.
Excluding the current refrigerant blends are already banned in Europe for containing CFCs and HCFCs, only 13 of the remaining 106 current ASHRAE listed R400 series blends would escape a PFAS ban. Now, PFAS ban only applies to the refrigerants that are HFO blends, meaning they use HFO chemicals within the blends of the refrigerant that make them contain the PFAS substance that is considered a biological time bomb, more or less. The problem is that we've been using these chemicals already, and you'll see that as we go on through this little info update. And so essentially, those 13 outside the scope are predominantly hydrocarbon blends. Of the 500 series, only two both hydrocarbon blends are outside of the scope. The non-exhausted list of fluorinated gases compiled by 5 European countries, Germany, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, and published last week by the European Chemicals Agency, is part of a joint restriction proposal under the European REACH regulations. Their regulations are different from the United States, so I'm not going to get too much into that. I'm just using them as a source to give you some conclusions as to why this PFAS is a big deal. The inclusion in the potential banned list of single component gases R125, R134a, and R143a, and the HFOs R1234YF and R1234ZE. Now, they are kind of trying to group these together when R125 and R134a and R143a is due to GWP. It's not due to PFAS. And so you got to realize that Europe is approximately 10 years ahead of the United States because they phased out R410a way back in 2014. So they've been using R32 for the past 10 years. But now this PFAS stuff is coming out, and they're saying, "Whoa, hold a minute! We're wanting to investigate and see, because these chemicals are known to create problems in health, and they get into the water, and they're forever chemicals. They don't break down, and so eventually you end up drinking them, or they get into food sources, or so you eat meat contaminated with it, or whatever. It finds its way into humans, and then there's no way the human body ever gets rid of it. It winds up in your liver, and eventually it's going to cause liver cancer. That's the way this works. And I'm not a doctor, so if you want to study this, go to medical school. I'm not a doctor. I'm just telling you how this is likely to cause cancer. I don't know, but that's what I'm gathering from the information that I'm reading. While R134a is no longer employed as a single component in new domestic and commercial refrigeration equipment in Europe, and its use in chillers is disappearing under pressure from the F-gas regulations, it remains an important component in many lower GWP alternative blends. The HFOs 1234YF and R1234ZE, along with R1233ZD, also included on the list, are also currently being offered as a single refrigerant options in chillers by a number of leading manufacturers. Now, chillers is far and away outside of the scope of what I do. I'm typically working on residential systems of anywhere from 1 to 5 tons. And on occasion, commercial applications, maybe up to 10, 15 tons. Max 25 tons per unit. That's what I'm licensed to work on. But commercial, I don't do very much commercial. So, it's only if that type of application is within my realm of wanting to work on it. And that varies depending on how the design of the system is and so on and so forth. So if you have questions regarding that, you need to contact me, and I'll ask you questions, and hopefully you can answer them, and that will determine whether I'm going to work on your system or not. And so goes on to say R32 not in scope. The most significant refrigerant falling outside the PFAS definition is R32, now commonly used in smaller air conditioning systems. And so why this is important is because there's one manufacturer currently. There's likely to be, I believe there's going to be at least one more that is going to use R32, which is important because it's a single component refrigerant and it doesn't have any of this PFAS bad chemical attached to it because it's a single component. It doesn't have any fluorinated gas in it. As far as I know, based on everything that I've read about it. And so it goes on to show a list now, and the thing is that I noted earlier is that some of these, it talks about R23, R152a. I'm not going to even get into that because it really doesn't have any bearing on what I do. It's just, you got to realize there's a slew of refrigerants that this is going to affect, all these, implications. And so it only concerns me to the point that it's going to affect air conditioning, heat pumps, things of that nature. And I live in a climate where we don't have much of a winter. And so typically, if I run into an electric system, it's typically just electric heat only. There are some heat pumps in my area, but very slim, very far and few between. It's mostly gas. It's usually gas furnaces. And you got to realize that my heating climate is here, there, and yon. Usually a couple weeks to a month, and we're back into AC mode. So our heating season down here in my area is very non-existent, to put it bluntly. And so air conditioning is more important to my climate than it is to anything else. And so there's a few things that I noted. R410c, which was a replacement for R-22 and AC equipment, that's being phased out. And this is just to go into further detail than what I did the previous couple of years, that I touched base on this. I think it was last year that I touched base on that, if you're using a replacement type refrigerant, that the life of that is going to disappear overnight, because it's a very small use, and manufacturers ain't going to produce that, only just to get stuck with it. And so, if your current system is using a replacement, drop-in, whatever you want to call it, an alternative refrigerant from either R-22 or whatever it is, if it's being phased out due to global warming potential or some other reason, then it's going to disappear overnight. So there's no safety in trying to jump to an alternative refrigerant. There's no safety in that. And so I'm skipping through a lot of this. Another one to note is R410a, otherwise known as Puron. Most people still call this Freon unless they've been educated to know that Freon and Puron are brand names. They just represent, but you could still have. I've seen some branding of R410a as Freon. It's fairly uncommon, but it's just a brand name. It really doesn't mean much. The technical term, and you got to realize, I'm in this business to know what your system needs. So you either trust me or you don't. And if you don't trust me, why are you watching this video? So I'm just stating facts here. And so I'm going to skip a lot of these because a lot of these are just various blends that may or may not be used for AC. I'm not going to get into any of those specifics. But also noted in this list is also R454b. This is the newer one that's due to come out. Now, why is this on the ban list? You got to realize this is Europe, and whether they're going to approve this or not, or whether they're going to approve this for a short time, it doesn't appear. They've already got R32, and an R32 is much better for a number of reasons, and I've already stated those reasons in previous videos. So again, if you're just now coming across this subject, then I recommend you to drop down in the description and pick a video down there and go and watch that video. I'd really recommend you to watch the entire series because it's going to tell you the whole history of why this is all playing out. An informed customer is a good customer, because then you understand my point of view. There's only one point of view at Austin Air Company. I'm a single one-man company. The only opinion you're going to get is mine. That's it. There is no other opinions here at Austin Air Company. And so people like to play and say, "Oh, well, I don't like using a small company because then if they're busy or whatever, then they can't get out here." I haven't had any of those issues. I mean, it might be a few hours, is the worst case scenario, but I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for 30 years. This isn't a brag. This is the state of fact. I went to HVAC school back in 1993. I finished somewhere around early 1996, and so by the summer of 1993, I was making the transition to work in this field, and so I had a job related to this field way back in 1993, toward the end of the year, around August. And because I had to become CFC certified in order to work and handle refrigerants. That was the stepping stone to get to where I needed to be. So I'm going to skip through all these refrigerants that they list here. I think it's self-explanatory. I mean, if you click on that article and read it for yourself, it goes into, and tells you what the GWP is of it and so on and so forth. Currently, anything above 700 GWP is on the chopping block. So that if it's above 700 GWP, then it's going to get chopped here fairly quick. If it's below 700 GWP and maybe somewhere in between that and 150 GWP, probably within another 12 years, and a lot of that stuff's going to be phased out as well because the goal is to get as low as possible. And so I'm just going to skip over that. And so we're going to get into the section where it's called exemptions. So if you scroll down to exemptions, it's an important thing. If accepted, the proposals would enter into force in 2025 and allow an 18-month transition period to alternatives. However, a number of exemptions are proposed for certain applications. These include recommended exemptions for refrigerants in HVAC equipment in buildings where national safety standards and building codes prohibit the use of alternatives. So in other words, that's okay. It's okay if this substance causes cancer because there isn't anything better. It's either that or, you're going to have to suffer through global climate change and an additional 1.5 Celsius of temperature increase by the year 2050. But hey, it's okay because, if you get liver cancer, you're not going to experience that. We're doing the best we can. Yeah, that's what it says. Read it. Exemptions are also proposed for low temperature refrigeration applications, refrigerants in laboratory test measurement equipment, and refrigerated centrifuges. The ban on PFAS refrigerants in low temperature refrigeration below minus 50 degrees Celsius seeks a transition period of 18 months and a 5-year exemption. So in other words, they know these PFAS substances are bad, but they're saying, oh, well, we're just going to try using them anyway. Who cares if they're bad? I'm just reading information, and I'm informing you. I'm encouraging you to think about these subjects when you read them because they're duping you. I mean, it's there in black and white, And so it goes on to say laboratory test equipment and centrifuges would receive a 12-year exemption. A 12-year exemption as no alternatives are currently available. So in other words, they're using the excuse, hey, there's no other alternative. We have to use this bad substance so you can have comfort cooling in your house or comfort heating if you're using a heat pump. And so it goes on to talk about this Kura gas, but the reason why I'm using this is because this is in Europe. And so, but they're proposing now that there's going to be exemptions for the HVAC market. Well, you got to realize that part of this, they don't have to do this in Europe. They've already got R32. And so there is no PFAS designation associated with R32. They've got over 100 million units in Europe that are functioning now. Since 2014, when they phased out and banned R410a. You got to remember, they're 10 years ahead of the United States. But, they have to do this, and I think this is part of the Paris Climate Agreement. They have to do this because the United States is kind of in a tough spot right now. That's what I gather. Anyways, that's the first part. So now we're going to get into this Arch news, and it's basically a blog post. This is basically an air conditioning, heating, refrigeration news blog type outfit. And so the title of this topic is, "What's all the fuss about PFAS and refrigerants?" And I'll tell you what all the fuss is. It's potential liver cancer. And I don't really get into specifics in this video because my previous update, my 2023 update, I got into the heart of why PFAS is a bad thing. And so go back and watch that video because I'm not going to get into that in this video because this is an entirely different topic. This is about regulations and see what they're going to allow and what they're not going to allow. Meaning, are they going to pull the wool over your eyes, and tell you, hey, what we're using is completely safe. You don't have to worry about it. You can feel good that you're doing the right thing for the environment, and you can do this and you can do that, and we can, fiddle faddle and just pretend that everything's going to be okay, And so, this is where we're at. Anyways, this is an opinion of Joanna R. Turpin. She's the one who wrote this blog post. This was March 1st of 2023. So this came to light after my video update last year, because my update last year was sometime around the end of January, about the same time that this video is being produced, only a year later. So it goes on to say, the latest refrigerant transition is well underway with 10% cut in the production of HFC refrigerants that went into effect last year. A much steeper cut happens next year, 2024, the year we're in. The cut is happening as we speak, when production of HFCs must be reduced to 60% of the baseline established by the EPA. There is no question that this step down will be a challenge for the HVAC industry. The challenge begins this year. As most know, these production cuts are a result of the AIM Act, which became law in December 2020. Under this legislation, Congress gave the EPA the authority to phase down the consumption and production of high GWP HFC refrigerants in the U.S. by 85% over the next 15 years. Unlike the last refrigerant transition, in which HCFCs such as R-22 Freon were phased out due to their ODP, ozone depletion potential, this transition is due to the fact that HFCs such as R410a and R404a, I believe that's used for refrigeration, so it really doesn't pertain to me, but it's in this post, are considered to be contributing to global warming. In addition to ODP and GWP, however, there are growing concerns about some of the chemicals used in certain synthetic refrigerants. For example, PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, are a group of man-made chemicals that have been used in many consumer products, including non-stick cookware, clothing, and furniture since the 1940s. So you got to understand, you already have these chemicals inside you. Because there's like 12,000 or some different chemicals, Teflon and, just a whole host of other chemicals that do not break down, and they get into our water supply, and you're drinking them. And you're currently drinking them right now. So let's add to that, and let's see if liver cancer becomes the norm. We're going to find out. So anyway, it goes on to say, are a group of man-made chemicals that have been used in many consumer products, furniture since the 1940s. They are highly resistant to heat, water, and oil, making them useful for a variety of applications, including refrigerants used in air conditioning and refrigeration equipment. However, their ubiquitous presence in water, soil, and air samples has raised concerns about their potential impacts on human health and the environment. But hey, we're doing this global warming thing for the environment. So what difference does it make? We got to do this because we're doing something, even though it's still detrimental to your health. But we're doing something. Hey, pat us on the back. One of the main concerns with PFAS is that once they are released in the environment, they do not break down easily and can remain there for long periods of time. They can also accumulate in the human body over time and have been found in blood samples from people tested all over the U.S. Another concern is that some types of PFAS may be linked to a range of health effects, including increased cholesterol levels, decreased birth weights, and liver damage. But they say that liver damage, they hope you missed the liver damage part. Because there is no cure for that. It's death, okay? Due to the concern over the potential health risk, the EPA and several states are starting to look at and restrict the use of PFAS in certain products. Maine, for example, passed a law in 2021 stating that as of January 1st, 2030, any product containing intentionally added PFAS may not be sold in Maine unless the use of PFAS in the product is specifically designated to be designated as currently unavoidable. So in other words, they're making an exception here. They're going to say, hey, it doesn't matter because there's no other product available. We have to use this bad product. We have to make an exception. For now, Maine, due to this, is not considering the prohibition of refrigerants containing PFAS. However, closer to 2030, the department may undertake an investigation to determine if refrigerants are, at that time, a problem, a currently unavoidable use, even though the ban on certain substances listed in Maine's legislation does not go into effect until 2030. We're going to try it out. This is a test run. You're the guinea pig here, okay? If you don't, maybe some people will get liver cancer, maybe some people won't. But they're going to, the Maine's legislation does not go into effect until 2030. The first phase of the legislation went into effect in January 1st of 2023, last year. Last year, they started banning products that contain this substance. So why are they banning these if it's entirely safe, why are they banning these products that don't necessarily need it? Or there's some other chemical they can use to replace the PFAS. And they're going to require manufacturers to label certain goods and components that fall under Maine's definition of PFAS. So in other words, it's not your definition, it's their definition. They make the rules, you abide by them. So for now, Maine is not considering the prohibition of refrigerant containing PFAS. However, closer to 2030, the department may undertake an investigation to determine if refrigerants are, at that time, a currently unavoidable use. So in other words, they're making exceptions. They're saying, well, we don't have any other choice, Our back is against the wall. It's either face a 1.5 degrees Celsius increase in global warming temperature by the year 2050, or maybe you might get liver cancer because we're using this not so good chemical, but we're doing our part to try to save the climate from itself because it's too warm out and people are crying about the climate, and it's climate science, it's not body science, it's not about keeping the body healthy, it's about keeping the climate healthy, okay? So the EPA gets involved. The EPA has not yet proposed any regulations concerning the use of PFAS in refrigerants. However, the agency has published its PFAS strategic roadmap, which outlines the schedule it will undertake in conducting specific measures regarding these chemicals. According to the roadmap, which runs through 2024, the year we're in, EPA plans to invest in research to increase understanding of PFAS exposure, proactively prevent PFAS from entering air, land, and water at levels that can adversely affect human health and the environment, and broaden and accelerate the cleanup of PFAS. They're going to accelerate the cleanup. Well, logically thinking, you wouldn't have to clean up if you didn't use or allow the substances. R32 is a viable alternative, but there's problems with R32 and they want to be lazy about it. And so, they're going to broaden and accelerate the cleanup of PFAS contamination to protect human health and ecological systems. Regulations and enforcement actions will likely follow. So in other words, it's always after the fact, it's always after the problem develops, that's when we're going to take action. In other parts of the world, PFAS are under fire as well. 5 European countries, I noted in the previous article that Europe has, situations, and that's another reason why I included it, because they're mentioned. For example, have proposed restricting around 10,000 different kinds of PFAS. There's over 12,000 of these chemicals, so the number is greater than what they even list here. And if you don't believe me, you can look back a year ago when I did the previous video, because it's in there. 10,000 different kinds of PFAS across the European Union. This would affect single component refrigerants such as R125, R134a, and R1234yf, which are used in many lower GWP, HFC, HFO blends. If approved, now they kind of confuse R125 because R125 is high global warming. It's a GWP problem more than it is a PFAS problem. My understanding is R125 does not have any PFAS because it's an HFC. It's not one of these HFO refrigerants. HFO is typically the R1234yf, long numbers, and then with a couple of numbers at the end of it. That's typically HFO, which are used in HFC HFO blends. And the reason why they blend it is because it's not capable of working properly for a high temp application like air conditioning for residences and buildings and commercial buildings and so on. And so it goes on to say, if approved later this year, the proposal would become effective in 2025. So it's another year away, with a transition period of 18 months for switching to alternative options, but a timeline that many European OEMs say it's impossible to meet. Unless you use R32, then you skip that. But the problem with R32 is it's got additional issues to work out, plus it's higher in the GWP realm. And they've been using it for 10 years. So, they're trying to get those numbers down, and they can't do it because there isn't anything that's going to work that's going to fit the building code to, how they want to do it. It's either that or use natural refrigerants that are more problematic. The unit could explode, it could ignite, it could, do all these other things that's, even more detrimental. And so the proposal does include an exemption of refrigerants in HVAC R equipment in buildings where national safety standards and building codes prohibit the use of alternatives. And so this is another thing that they're using to escape the clause. They're saying, well, there's an exemption here because there is nothing else available, and if it's going to affect the national safety standards and the building codes, then we can't use those alternatives, because, it prohibits the use of those alternatives. The story of what will happen in the U.S. to refrigerants containing PFAS is still unfolding. So in other words, there's a lack of information. They're starting to, I don't know, maybe the video that I produced last year, maybe it got some traction and got the ears of somebody, and they're saying, whoa, wait a minute. If the knowledge base of just a a small-time HVAC contractor starts sounding the alarm bells, and all of a sudden, all these cases come forward, developing liver cancer, we've got a serious problem on our hands. So, however, it is evident that PFAS will remain a significant concern for federal and state governments, which means that further regulations or restrictions related to refrigerants could be introduced in the not so distant future. Now, one thing to note is that they've got this 12-year exemption. Well, if you do the math, 2024 plus 12 is 2036. Now, what did I tell you the timeline was for the United States to get below 150? 2035, 2036 is when the new ban is going to take place. It has to, because that is the requirement of the Kigali Amendment that was signed by President Obama back in 2016. The requirement for U.S. is to get below the I believe it's 350 GWP. If my memory serves me correct, it's to get below 350 GWP. Yet there is no substance other than propane and a few others, but there's complications with those. As I've laid out in previous videos, so if you're wanting to know what the status is on that, go watch because I'm not going to get into it. This video is getting long already. And so I've got this other article from a blog post, updates on refrigerant policies in the USA, and so I'm going to get into that next. Stay tuned. So here's this other blog post that I've got, and again, there will be a link in the description below that links to this. It's a blog post, and basically it talks a little bit about the Kigali Amendment and HFCs and so on and so forth, but and the AIM Act and some other some other information that you can read through. But I'm going to jump down to where it says PFAS. Well, there's some other important things about allowing up to 500 grams of propane in open appliances and 300 grams those with doors or drawers. So so you can see that propane is being considered, but there's limitations as to how much the charge can be. And I state in a previous video that I feel propane is the way forward because it's natural. The problem is that it's got a tendency to explode, but those issues can be worked out, but cost is going to be a thing. So anyway, jump down to where this article talks about PFAS, a new bump in the refrigerant transition road, because this is primarily what this update is about, because there is no new information, in terms of availability. I mean, this video could post, and within a week, 2 weeks, a month later, and information could start to trickle out. So you got to realize, timing is, but I probably won't have the time to do this video then, which is why I'm doing it now. So anyway, another action that can be relevant for refrigerant trends is the PFAS Strategic Roadmap, EPA's Commitments to Actions 2021 to 2024. EPA Administrator Michael Regan established the EPA Council on PFAS in April 2021, so they know about it. April 2021. This was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or it will be 3 years ago in April. And charged it to develop a bold strategic whole of EPA strategy to protect public health and the environment from bad chemicals, from the impacts of PFAS. The roadmap sets timelines by which the EPA plans to take specific actions and commits to bolder new policies. But yet, all these manufacturers, the majority of them, are going to use a refrigerant with with a PFAS substance in it. Roughly, I believe it's 31% of PFAS substance within the refrigerant. And the con with air conditioning for the home is you can have pounds and pounds, depending on the size of the unit. I mean, and the efficiency thereof, it could be 10, 12, 18 pounds of refrigerant, within one system. And so that's a lot of refrigerant. If you spring a leak and wherever it is, it can eventually work its way into our water supply. So anyways, it goes on to state, meanwhile, the state of Maine, I mentioned them before in a previous article, has already started to take action on PFAS, but it's abysmal. It's not the kind of action that you would think, with the ramifications of this being a health issue. It's abysmal. In particular, the use of intentional added PFAS in any product sold, offered for sale, or distributed for sale will be prohibited in the state effective from 2030. So until 2030, I mean, you've got the reins to do whatever you want in the state of Maine and probably everywhere else because no one cares. This is back page news. It's not a problem right now, and so we're not going to worry about it because it's not a problem right now. We're only going to wait until until we've got a slew of people with liver cancer, and then we're going to try to start figuring out where is all this liver cancer coming from. People are drinking too much, or they blame it on something else. Who knows? So it goes on to say, it is still early to know what the impact of PFAS regulations will be on the refrigeration market. One of the unknowns is what the definition of PFAS will be according to U.S. rules. So in other words, hey, it's our definition. We're going to tell you what to do, and you're going to do it. On one hand, the U.S. Senate proposed a bill on PFAS last June in which the definition of PFAS specifies that substances subject to restrictions contain at least 2 fully fluorinated carbon atoms, thus excluding fluorinated refrigerants. On the other, the definition adopted by the states of Maine and California, as well as by the European Union, also comprises substances that contain 1 fully fluorinated methyl or methylene carbon atom, which means that most of the refrigerants used nowadays will be banned. They're in black and white. Indeed, the only refrigerants not included in such definition and not already prohibited by previous regulation are naturals. R32 is one of them. R410a and the recently launched R1132. Now, those substances are probably for ice boxes, maybe for larger chiller, who knows. R32 pertains to my market, so that's why I'm bringing this up. But, I don't know what R152a is for, and I really don't care because I already know that it's probably not going to be suitable for air conditioning market, at least how it pertains to me. R1132, it's really new, and I haven't heard anything about that either. So, it's likely not to matter to me at all. But it's in this document, so that's why I'm talking about it. It will be interesting to see if more new low GWP refrigerants not in accordance with the PFAS definition will be launched. Yeah, because they're only going to be canceled, if they determine that this is a dire human health situation. I mean, do you really think that temperature change, of 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2050 is going to matter to somebody that's got liver cancer? I mean, come on. The road to alternative refrigerants, considering all the policies cited above and the trends of the market, it is likely that the use of natural refrigerants in the U.S. will increase in the next few years. The current scenario was described in the conference organized by Atmosphere last June. According to the data presented at that conference, there are currently around 1,150 transcritical CO2 installations in the U.S. In essence, for supermarkets, grocery, convenience stores, the share is 0.7% of the total. Additionally, there are 919,000 hydrocarbon-based store refrigeration cases, 1,300 industrial sites with low-charge ammonia, and just 5 supermarkets with ammonia in the U.S. Now, ammonia is a natural refrigerant, but the thing is that it's got toxicity problems, so I don't ever see that being used in a residence. I just don't see it. I think they use propane first, But there's got to be restrictions. In accordance with propane, I think it can be done safely. But the problem is cost. Because your house is going to be retrofitted, it's not going to be. They're not going to be able to allow propane to enter the structure, which means it's going to be some sort of chiller type application where the propane is on the outside of the building, and then you use a glycol-based type brine solution to provide the cooling and or heating, if it's a heat pump. And that can open up a big boon, if they, because it's similar to R22 in operation. So I don't foresee there being any other option. I think propane is the next solution, but it's going to take time before we get there. Low GWP synthetic refrigerants such as R1234YF or R1234ZE and their corresponding blends are also replacing high GWP ones as they start to be accepted by SNAP rules. However, as mentioned above, regulations on PFAS could restrict the use of these refrigerants in the future. The big question now is, will PFAS be another bump on the road for refrigerant stakeholders? Stay tuned. They don't know. It's this topic is playing out in real time, and so we're just waiting for the information. And so I've got this other chart, and I may put this up, significantly sooner than, because it basically tells you that we've been using this R1234YF. We've been using it for some time, so this isn't like some new, it's already out there. It is in the automotive, if you've bought a car recently, as of 2021, your air conditioning in your car contains R1234YF. So, the issue with cars though is that the charge is much less. Usually it's probably maybe 2 pounds at the most, maybe 3 pounds. I doubt it. It's probably somewhere around 2 pounds, maybe 2.5 of refrigerant. The problem is that R1234YF for your car is nothing but that. So, if it springs a leak, it's already in the environment. So anyways, that's all I got for you. I appreciate you watching the video. If you watch this through the entire, plus all the other episodes that I've done, I greatly appreciate it. It takes me a lot of time and energy to research this stuff and figure out and find all this information, and then try to condense the information that I do find down into a suitable topic for video. And please, if you like the content I provide, please do me a favor and hit that subscribe bell, notification bell, like it, and then share this video with your friends, family. If they're going through this ordeal of hitting air conditioning, you've really got to do your research, because things are changing in HVAC and not always in good ways. So again, I thank you for watching the video. Have a great day. My name is Ray Austin. I'm a Texas licensed HVAC contractor serving the Katy, Texas and some surrounding areas. If you live in or near the Katy, Texas area and you want to schedule service, you can call me at 832-475-6895. Or for more information, you can always visit me on my main website at www.austinairco.com. For Austin Air Company, my name's Ray Austin. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye. And I hope your day is comfortable. Thank you.
Did you drink water from any source after 2025? Or your AC unit mysteriously catch fire? Do not sign anything. Do not settle with what the insurance company is going to pay you. Tell them you mean business. Hire a knowledgeable law firm that has your interest at heart and that will get you justice. Don't sign anything. Don't settle for what the insurance company is going to pay you. Call a knowledgeable law firm that will fight and win you justice. Get everything, get all the money that you deserve. Call Burns and Heckler at 1-800-WIN-LOSE. Do it now. This is not a lawsuit against your HVAC contractor. Call Burns and Heckler at 1-800-WIN-LOSE. Do it now.